Some gear made the cut. Some should have stayed on the shelf. And we're going to show you 10 of each, so buckle up. Hi everybody, welcome to the LocaCarnivore. Over the years, I've hauled it, hunted with it, and sometimes threw it back in the truck with regret. Today we're going to show you the 10 pieces of gear I wouldn't touch again, and the 10 I'd buy all over if I had to start from scratch. Well, our goal for today is to help you avoid the mistakes that I've made, and they're pretty common mistakes actually in many cases, and to show you the 10 pieces of gear that I think are quite frankly indispensable when it comes to hunting, especially where I hunt. Now we're going to talk about quite a few pieces of gear, 10 that I didn't like, and of course, and 10 that I do like. And we're going to be mentioning a few brand names. We're going to try to stay away from brand names for the most part. We don't have any sponsors. You know, I'll admit, right now I am looking at doing the affiliate program with YouTube, basically because YouTube, with their new algorithm, is just killing our revenue. I mean, we are dying on the vine and rather rapidly. And I'm not alone. Even heavy hitters like Hickok 45 have said that their revenue is way down since YouTube, basically, without declaring it, went to war against gun and hunting content. So if you want to see more of this content, you need to really help us out. And like I said, I got to make a buck, and I might have to do some affiliate stuff in the future, just giving you a heads up. I normally don't have sponsors, but I might have to go that route. But like I said, you can help us out. The big way you can help us out is by sharing the video, because if you share the video, we get more views and it shows YouTube that we are of value to them. We're making them money, and if they make money, they'll keep us around. And that goes for all hunting and gun content. If you want to keep seeing this stuff, you need to buckle up and you need to help us out by sharing. And the other thing, quite frankly, we do have a Patreon. If you go over there and support us, the link's down in the description. And make sure you stay with us all the way through the video, because at the end of the video, we'll show you the one piece of equipment that I think is frankly indispensable when it comes to hunting. I've used it and I love it, and I will never ever get rid of this. All right, getting into the gear that I regret buying. First on the list, and this isn't necessarily in preferential order, but just first on the list out of the gate would be knives, hunting knives that have a built-in gut hook. And I did do a review on our LocaCarnivore website about the buck knife that I own, which has a gut hook. Nothing against buck one way or the other, but if you want depth on this, and I've got other videos and stuff I've done on some of these things, I'll point them out to you. Links will be down in the description for everything. So if you want deep dives on this, this is an overview. We're just going to touch on the things that I regret buying and the stuff that if I had to start all over again, I would get again. So, like I said, gut hook knives. The main problem with the gut hook knife is the way, at least the one that I have is designed, is when you're using the gut hook, the point of the knife has a tendency to tip into the gut of the animal, and you can get unexpected results there. Depending on how it works, it can really not work out as well as you would think. That gut hook's designed to open that abdominal cavity very slick and easy without damaging the and opening up any of the intestines, perforating the intestines, and getting all that stuff on your meat. And I've found that it can become a problem, and it can actually inadvertently perforate the intestines and make a mess of things, basically. The other problem with gut hooks is when you're trying to skin and stuff, they can kind of be a little problematic on that round. So gut hook knives, not my favorite. Right, the next item that I regret buying, and this is a big regret, and it's got a war story with it, so stick with me on this. Federal's Fusion ammo. Now, I have to admit, first of all, I'm a big fan of Federal ammo. I use a lot of their ammo. I'm not plugging them, I'm not shilling for them, but in this case, I think they went pretty wrong. And I have to admit, though, the ammo that I did use was in 308, and it was when the ammo just first hit the market. So this is quite a few years ago when the Federal Fusion came out. Maybe they've improved the product since I used it. I don't know. If you've got your stories about Federal Fusion, whether you like it or you had the same experience I'm about to tell you, go down in the comments, let us know. Let's get that conversation going. Again, nothing against Federal, but my experience with their 308 in the Fusion was a bad experience. Bottom line was I was lined up on a deer maybe about 30 yards away, give or take, and this was a 308. I was using a 16-inch barrel carbine, so maybe the velocity reduction had something to do with it. I don't know. And like I said, I've always had good luck with Federal ammo. But in this case, I fired a shot. The gunfight, if you will, with the deer, A nice buck, whitetail. That started about 30, 35 yards, and he got hit, and he started trotting off like whitetails can do if you don't happen to anchor them right then and there. You know, break them down somehow so that they fall straight down. At any rate, he started to run off, so I started flinging lead at him just to make sure he would go down. I fired 4 shots, and I thought, did I miss all these shots? He eventually piled up about 70, 75 yards away. I had to go kind of find him and all that. But so he did go down. Well, when I got a hold of him and took him apart, the post-mortem exam yielded the fact that I hit with all 4 rounds, and not a single one of those rounds expanded. There was no evidence of expansion whatsoever. All the rounds were straight through, caliber diameter, and that included a heart shot. In fact, I think the first round I hit him with was that heart shot, but it didn't do substantial enough damage to really shut him down right away. And all the other 4 shots were all solid lung shots through and through, but no sign of expansion. So Federal Fusion, not my faves. Hopefully you guys fixed it, but who knows? Again, if you've had good experience and maybe it's gotten better, let us know. And if you're looking for more content, we do have a website and a store linked off that website, LocaCarnivore.com. Links down in the description. We'd appreciate you going over there, checking out what we have to offer for you as far as good information. And of course, just hit that store tab at the top and go in and you can get some LocaCarnivore merchandise. Another good way to help support us and keep us and channels like us around for the future. Next on my list of regrets. It's not about the rifle here. I just didn't want to take the scope off the rifle. But let's talk scopes for just a minute. And there's actually 3 different things about scopes we're going to talk about for regrets. The first one is scopes that have a small eye box. Now, what is the eye box? The eye box is it's sort of a theoretical thing, but it's the eye relief and then the amount of angle that you get when you look through the scope. So if you're looking through the scope and you mount your face, you get your cheek weld and everything. Sometimes, have you noticed that some scopes, if your head's even just a tiny bit out of alignment with the center line of the scope, everything's just all basically just black inside. You don't get to see through the scope very well. Well, that's the eye box. So scopes that have a small eye box means that if you have to keep your head absolutely dead center on that scope or you don't get a good image. Now, a wider eye relief scope, not eye relief necessarily, and you do want a long eye relief. And longer eye reliefs also usually translate, in my experience, to a larger eye box. So that's that cone, if you will, that imaginary cone of being able to see through the scope. So a scope with a larger eye box is more forgiving. So if you just happen to be just, like a 1/8 inch off or a 1/4 inch off on your alignment, you just brought that scope up real quick for a snapshot, you still have a good view through that scope. So that's what I'm talking about. And while we're on the subject of scopes, before I get to the next item, by the way, do give us a big thumbs up. Like this video, please. We want you on the LocaCarnivore team, so please subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell when you're subscribing so you won't miss any of our great videos. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Next on the hit parade of regrets is fixed power scopes. This is for hunting. Now, fixed power scopes, they're fine for tactical use, in my opinion, although a variable is not a bad idea. But this is my original hunting scope that I had on my first hunting rifle, my first bolt action big game rifle. And it's just a fixed 4-power. Turns out you do need a fair amount of magnification. I'm going to get to that in just a second here. But a fixed power scope for hunting, in my opinion, unless you are like back east somewhere and you're hunting out of a tree stand, your shots are only, 50 yards, 60 at the most or something like that, then a fixed power is probably going to do fine for you. But out in the West where you've got variable ranges, you can engage. I've shot animals anywhere from 10 yards to over 300 yards. So it just requires a scope with more flexibility on the magnification. So really regret getting a fixed power scope. One more regret that I have, rifles with a 2-position safety, we're talking bolt actions, that do not lock the bolt when the gun is on safe. Now this gun has already been safety checked, but if you cock the weapon, it's a cock on opening action like most of them, and you apply the safety, guess what? You can still open the bolt. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And that's because I've actually had a bolt come open in the field when it was on safe and didn't even realize it. So I don't like guns with the 2-position safety that don't lock the bolt. So don't you get one. Now the next bit of gear that I regret isn't really a piece of gear per se, it's a cartridge. And it pains me to have to say this and put this cartridge on this list, but the reality is the reality. And that cartridge is the 375 Holland & Holland Magnum, 375 H&H, commonly known. That was the cartridge that was chambered in my first hunting gun, the first hunting big game rifle I ever bought. This was a long, long time ago, and I could only afford one gun at that time, and I thought to myself, you know, I don't know where this hunting thing's going to take me. If I'm going to end up, maybe I'd like to go up to Alaska sometime and do some hunting up there, and I might have to deal with big brown bears, and who knows, I might even someday do an Africa trip, who knows. So I wanted one cartridge that would take care of everything, and the 375 H&H is wonderful in that regard. It will handle everything from basically whitetails to elephants. However, the problem is it's become a bit of an issue to actually use anymore. And I did do a video, if you want a deep dive on the 375 H&H, again the link's down there. I did a deep dive on that. It's still, in my opinion, the best hunting cartridge overall ever developed. However, it's become a real problem in the last few years. It's essentially the ammo has gotten astronomically expensive, and it's also a little more difficult to find. You can still get it, but it is harder to find. But the main thing is it's just stupid expensive. I can't afford to run this gun and stay current with it and practice with it and all that. And I'll show you in the other section what I'm using these days and why I think it's a lot better. So it pains me to say it, but the 375 H&H, unless you're definitely going after, you know, big Kodiaks or you're going over to Africa or something like that, most North American hunting is just cost prohibitive anymore. And as John Belushi used to put it, and another thing. So yeah, here's yet another thing that I don't like, and that is rifles, bolt-action rifles with detachable magazines. I don't like these. It's just, I've had them come out. I've had them fall out, quite frankly, and it's really annoying. Just, if you can, get a blind magazine or one with a hinged floor plate. All right, number 9 on my list of things I regret for hunting gear, it's another cartridge, the 44 Magnum. Now, as a hunting cartridge, it's not a bad cartridge per se, so I'm not hating on this thing, but where I'm coming from is for bear defense. And if you want a deep dive on why the 44 Magnum is not my favorite anymore, you can go check out my fastest bear gun video. And that's where I compare a revolver to a striker-fired semi-auto to a 1911. And the 44 Mag, just a slight spoiler, it kind of came off worse for the wear. It really surprised me. So you want to go check out that video, but just quite frankly, for bear defense, for the most part, I've passed on the 44 Mag. All right, number 10 on our hit parade, gear that I regret buying, belt holsters. Now this particular belt holster happens to be a 1791 for mid-frame revolvers, medium frame revolvers. I frankly, as a holster, I do like this, and I did a review on it, so the link's down in the description. You can go watch that. Here you can see a few snippets from that video. But the main thing is, it's not so much this holster per se, because I do like this particular holster, but is having a belt holster when I'm hunting. And I'll show you in the section of coming up here of the gear that I do like and I am keeping that I would buy again if I was starting over. I'll show you what I've gone to in place of the belt holster. But basically, having something like a big heavy gun right on your belt, it gets in the way of your backpack straps, it gets buried under your hunting clothing. It's really basically a pain. So I've gone to a better system, and I would suggest you don't bother with belt holsters for hunting. Hey, thanks for hanging in there with us. Appreciate it. Let's get into the 10 items that if I had to do it all over again, the ones I definitely would get, or if I had to buy it again, I definitely would buy again. And these aren't necessarily in order, but first on the list would be the Nosler AccuBond. And again, I'm not shilling for Nosler, but I've tried a lot of hunting bullets, including other Nosler type bullets. And you heard about the Federal Fusion. I didn't like that, but that's its own story. But I've tried a lot of other hunting bullets, both expensive and cheap, premium and run-of-the-mill. And I keep coming back to that Nosler AccuBond. It just does its job so well. It's quite accurate for a hunting bullet. Is the most accurate bullet out there. No, it's probably not the most accurate bullet, but for the ranges that I hunt, at reasonable ranges, say 400 to 500 yards at the most, it is more than adequate for accuracy. But the AccuBond, once it gets to the target, it just does its job time and time and time again. And it is such a predictable performer. It just has tremendous energy transfer and absolutely excellent, outstanding penetration all at the same time. So it is such a good balance. I had told you about the fact I don't like hunting knives with integrated gut hooks. Well, what do I like then? A dedicated gut hook. I think this one's from Buck. This is super slick. It is so small and so light. Yeah, it's an extra piece of equipment, and the gut hook knife was sort of like, well, it's a 2-in-1, and it'll save, you know, space on my belt or in my pack and all this blah, blah, blah. Well, the reality is that it is the gut hook knives, as you saw, not my fave. It's a bad compromise. So I want a dedicated gut hook, and this thing, it's just like a zipper. It uses a utility knife blade, and they're replaceable and all that. So it's really easy to, you don't have to keep it sharpened. You just, when they get dull, you change it out. There's no reason not to have one. So get yourself a dedicated gut hook. All right, the third item that I would buy again if I had to start over. It's not necessarily a piece of gear, it's another cartridge. The 300 Winchester Magnum. Now I know I'm just going to get tons of comments about the fact of everybody else's pet cartridge. I just, you know, stomped all over their little feel goods, and that's not my intention here. I'm just telling you what worked for me. And for hunting, especially out west, but I would use this cartridge even if I had to go back east or something like that. But if I'm hunting out west or in Alaska, that 300 Winchester Magnum is just superb. I mean, it has all the reach you'd ever want to have. With the right bullet and the right equipment and skill set, it's a genuine 1,000 yard elk killer if you needed it. I'm not recommending you take pot shots at critters that far out, but if you can do it, it's the cartridge that'll get it done, and with a lot less recoil than some of the other things like the RUMs, you know, the Remington Ultra Mags and those sorts of things, and the Weatherby's especially. And yeah, it does have some recoil, and, you know, compared to like a 308 or a 6.5 Creedmoor or something like that, whatever. But this thing has all the power you're ever going to need for anything in North America. It has tremendous reach. It shoots super flat. And if you can deal with the recoil, it's not that bad. It's just a superb, superb round. I definitely would do that. In fact, if I had to start all over again and I could only have one rifle, I would get a 300 Win Mag. Sorry, 375. Oh, it just really pains me to say that, but I would get a 300 Win Mag. Now, the next piece of gear that I really basically can't do without anymore, and I would definitely get again, is a scope with an illuminated reticle. Since I started hunting with an illuminated reticle last year, I have found it indispensable. It is just a huge game changer. So if you are hunting in an area where illuminated reticles are legal, which they are fortunately where I hunt, go get one. Just go get one, and you'll see why. The fact that it lights that reticle up against, especially, you know, when you're in the early light of the day or that last bit of light, legal light at the night, in the evening, not at night, but in the evening, in the afternoon, it lets you see that reticle so distinctly, so clearly on an animal that might be in shadow or something. But get an illuminated reticle. It's just a huge game changer. If it's legal where you hunt, go get one. So here's another item that if I was starting all over again, I definitely would get. And that is a folding blade saw. These things are fantastic. They come generally with two blades. This particular one's, I think it's a Gerber. Yeah, it's a Gerber. I'll do a review on this maybe down in the future so you can kind of see how it really works out in the field. But for now, since I've gotten it, it's really fantastic. It comes with two blades. Most of them have two blades. You want a two blade. One is a coarse saw for like sawing wood and stuff. So, you know, if they're around the camp for firewood or whatever, or you've got a deadfall that you need to, you know, deal with or something like that, or whatever it might be. Really handy item. And then of course it has a fine bladed bone saw blade, which is very useful. And these things they're super compact. They're super lightweight. They fold up really easy, so they just slide into a pack pocket or a pants or coat pocket or something like that. They deploy really easy. They're very positive, and you can take the blades completely out so you can get them all cleaned up after you're done doing something. And this is a great compromise. Instead of, I used to carry one of those big Wyoming saws where you put it together. It's basically a good size, you know, a small hacksaw. Those things are actually pretty heavy to carry around, and they require some assembly. It's kind of an IKEA saw, so I'm really not big about that. But the folders, they just deploy so easy, and the blade is long enough to deal with big animals like elk or moose or something like that, to break those down. Right, number 6 on my list of things I would buy again and again, especially if I was starting out, is and I gotta take it out of its little case, a laser rangefinder. Yay! Now, everybody has them. There's all sorts of ones. They're definitely sophisticated. I'm not going to go into a full deal on this, but just get a laser rangefinder. They are fantastic because you need to know how far you're shooting. Unless you're in really heavy cover or something, you just know your shots are always, less than 50 yards or something like that. You probably don't need it for that. But if you're out in the open or anywhere, you need a laser rangefinder. Now here's an item, a piece of gear that I find absolutely indispensable anymore, and that is shooting sticks. This is a tripod model. I think this is a bog pod. There's other ones out there. You can get a single, a monopod. You can get the traditional, V-type with 2 legs on them. In fact, you can just make them yourself with some dowels if you want just a V-type. But I've gone to the tripod thing because it is so much steadier. And it's really easy to deploy. I just carry it around like a walking stick, and then when I need to use it, I just take Mr. Sticks and I put Mr. Rifle on the sticks, and I've got a really steady hold. Now the only thing that I'm thinking of upgrading it to is maybe going to something that clamps up here, because that's kind of the new frontiers for shooting sticks, is the ones that clamp and hold the gun. So those are really rock steady, but I have to decide if the weight's worth it. But get yourself a set of shooting sticks. Even if you're hunting up close and everybody's like, oh, well, you got to set them up and all this and everything. I'll tell you what, your average deer, even if they see you, if they've decided to freeze and they've decided they're not going to run away right away, they will give you time. I've had deer and other animals that are maybe like 30 yards away, 40 yards away, and further, of course, but they just stood there. So I just calmly set the sticks up and I calmly put the rifle on the sticks and I take care of business. But if you have to shoot and you have a really steady shot even at close ranges, so I'd recommend them for that. And if you've got to shoot out farther, I mean, this particular bipod with this particular rifle, it helped me nail a pronghorn at 320 yards one time. So can't say enough. Get yourself some shooting sticks. And another big plus for shooting sticks, it is a very handy place if you need to stop and rest and you don't have a place that you want to confidently put your pack on and hang it up. You can hang your pack or drape your binos off it or whatever. It gives you a place to put all that equipment when you're just standing around taking a break or whatever you're doing, or glassing, whatever it might be, but you're going to be there for a while. All right, number 8 on my list of gear that I would get again if I had to start all over, it's a cartridge. Again, this is a 10 millimeter. The 10 millimeter for me has fully replaced the 44 Magnum for bear defense. And it's also just a great, hunting round. You can use it on white-tailed deer if you want, even mule deer at the correct ranges. So the 10 millimeter has replaced the 44 Mag, which I was, sort of shading on in the previous section and everything. And if you want a deeper dive on this subject, I did a video, not particularly on the 10 millimeter per se, but it is backup guns for hunters. So the link's down there in the description along with all the others. You want to deep dive on that and figure out why the 10 is such a great cartridge. Plus you can, again, look at that fastest bear gun video I did, and you will discover why I've gone to the 10 millimeter. It is my go-to bear defense now. Item number 9 on my list of gear that I would get again if I had to start over from scratch, it's a chest rig. And it has replaced, for me, the belt holsters. Remember I said I wasn't a big fan of belt holsters anymore? Well, this is why. I went with the chest rig. And I did 2 different videos. One was the initial build of the chest rig and then an update when I made some changes. So links down there in the description. Check those out for the deep dive. But you're going to find that a chest rig, for me at least, it puts everything where I need it, and it's always on the outside of all my clothing. I can always keep all that emergency equipment on the outside of my clothing. It doesn't get buried like a belt holster. It does not interfere with backpacks, either the shoulder straps or the sternum strap, and especially gets everything off your hips so that your big belt that goes on your hips for your backpack, if you're carrying a big pack, it doesn't interfere with that. And so it's fantastic. Hey, we're finally to the last one on the list of the items that I would definitely get again. And this one is the top item. I would have this with me in my hunting gear no matter what, no matter where I'm going or when I'm hunting or what I'm hunting, it is always with me. And I suggest strongly that you get it too. It's not very racy, it's not super high speed, but it is absolutely vital for me. And that is an acrylic stocking cap. Yeah, these are in hunter orange. If you're doing bow hunting or whatever, you might not want that, but don't worry about the color. Just worry about A, the configuration, and B, the materials. First of all, you want just a stocking cap. I've got a lightweight version, and then I've got a heavier version. So, you know, coolish days and then darn cold days. And these are so versatile. You can put them over other hats. If you have like a musher cap on, or you've got just a ball cap on or something, this will go right over that, either one of these. This will go right over those caps. Or you can just use them as a standalone. And I like the lightweight one for if I'm moving around a lot, and then the big heavy one. But why acrylic? You could use wool, and I do have wool caps, wool watch caps that I carry around, and I do use those. But the acrylic is better in my opinion. First of all, acrylic, it is relatively water repellent. It's water phobic. So it takes your sweat and rotates it away from your skin, which helps keep you warmer. And wool insulates even when it's wet, but not as well as acrylic, because acrylic does not absorb that water to any great degree at all, whereas wool does absorb some water, and it does tend to still keep it near your skin, versus the acrylic will transport it away from your skin, and it is just a really good material in my opinion. It's always there. It will insulate, even if it does get wet, it's going to insulate. It retains almost all of its insulating properties, even when it's soaking wet. So you can be out in the snow or even some rain or something and have confidence that this is going to keep you warm. But no way would I ever go hunting anymore without at least one acrylic cap. Well, that's about it. That's the gear that I regret and the gear that I would get again if I had to start all over again. What pieces of equipment do you find indispensable, or which ones have you regret buying? Go down in the comments. Let's start that conversation. Love to hear from you. And thank you for taking your valuable time and spending this with us today at the LocaCarnivore. Can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I want to leave you with one final thought. Even John Wayne knows that Han shot first. Talking to you, George Lucas, you know what I mean, Pilgrim. Hey, thanks for watching.